You're still here.
Good afternoon. That's because they saved the best for last, Governor, right?
The best is coming.
That's what that actually is true. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Bakari. I'm from the big city of Denmark, South Carolina, where we have a full 3 stoplights and a blinking light. And my mom and dad always tell me that the 2 most important words in the English language are the words thank you, and they're not nearly said enough. And so I want to start by saying thank you for having me, and give a round of applause to the organizers of this amazing event. Charles, I'm not sure what black excellence looks like, but I have a feeling it looks like this room. And so I'm happy to be a part of it, and with one of my heroes, Governor Patrick. How are you today?
Back at you. Thank you.
I want to start by saying that you were the 2nd black elected governor in the history of this great country. What gave you the audacity, the courage, the vision to want to run and be governor of Massachusetts?
Oh, we don't have time for that answer.
Well, give us the short answer, because we have like a producer. I'm going to cut to a TV break in a minute.
You've heard me talk about this wonderful introduction that Governor Wilder gave to me when I was in office. He was, Governor Wilder, as I hope you all know, was the first black governor elected in this country, former governor of Virginia. What's that? Yes, that one. And Governor Wilder said, you know, people make a big fuss about being the first. He said, being the first doesn't mean a thing unless there's a second.
Correct.
We've heard a lot today about the importance of lifting as we climb. And by the way, in that spirit, I want to acknowledge the new-ish, no longer new, but new-ish First Lady of Maryland who is here, Dawn Moore. Great to see you. So the first thing I ever ran for, as you know, was governor, and I ran for that job mostly because I wanted the agenda to be ambitious, and I wanted to set that agenda. We hadn't had a black governor in Massachusetts before. We hadn't had a Democrat in 16 years. Mm-hmm. And our dynamic in Massachusetts is not so much Democrat-Republican, it's more insider-outsider, right? It's a very tight, inward-looking political establishment, and the way to win was going to be building at the grassroots, talking to people, building support, listening to people. And as I did that, I realized not only was I was better informed about what being governor and being an ambitious governor actually meant, but there was power in the respect shown by showing up and listening to people, meeting them where they were, where they worked and lived, and where they were in every other sense. So it was much more about, you know, kind of raising our collective ambitions about what we could do together in Massachusetts, and I wanted to lead that, and I think we didn't get everything right, but we got a lot right.
You really did. You know, one of the things that I remind people of is when I ran in 2006, it was kind of before Barack Obama. A lot of the young elected officials wanted to be like Deval Patrick. I'm not calling you old, but I'm just saying that's what we are. We all wanted to be like Deval Patrick, but now you see we live in a country where you have Houston, LA, Chicago, New York that are all run and led by Washington, D.C., but the larger cities are all run and led by black folk, and you have this political power. I want you to talk about
the 2 young men who were up here just a little bit ago.
Oh, yeah, they're amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
They're amazing. Yeah. So I guess my question to you is kind of practical and action-oriented. How do we continue to lift while we climb in terms of ensuring we have a continuous new generation and growth of black elected officials like yourself back in early 2000s?
Well, I was very fortunate that other black leaders and other leaders were encouraging of me. They coached me. Mm-hmm. They, you know, well before the ones who ultimately were ready to endorse publicly. But they say, you know, try this, be here. Let me introduce you to that, to this or that person. I've taken calls and shown up for any number of candidates when I was in office, including my friend when he was deciding whether to leave the United States Senate and run for President of the United States. And frankly, the 2 mayors who were just here, when they were candidates. I think Wes and I talked maybe once a week or every 10 days as you were getting ready to make the decision, and then when he had time during the campaign. That's what we're supposed to do. And it's not that there is one formula for this, but there are ways in which we can help others anticipate what the inbound is likely to be,
Yes.
what it feels like to raise expectations, knowing that folks are looking for ways to call you out for having come short of those expectations, how important it is to govern beyond the next election cycle or news cycle to the next generation, and how much courage that takes, political capital that takes, and to have somebody, I think, around who is, saying you can, and in fact you should, and yes, it's hard and painful, but there is so much to be gained for others and through others for you in doing so was incredibly important to me, and I hope to be important or helpful in that way to others.
One of the unique things about Deval Patrick, the governor, the individual who's a part of BEA and the advisor to so many younger elected officials around the country, is you meet this moment. We live in a country right now that is very divided, divided by race, divided by partisan, divided by region. And so talk to me about, and I've heard you talk through this before, but talk to me about your message during this time where we have a very divided union, and it seems to be growing, and we seem to be growing further apart.
So I'm gonna be a little bit contrary, and maybe echo something that Heather McGhee said earlier. We are less divided, I surmise, than we are portrayed. And I realize I'm talking to someone in the media, but you understand what I'm talking about. You understand what I'm talking about.
I got you. No, yeah.
All right, there is a sort of a sensational appetite.
For sure.
Or an appetite for sensationalism that we have, and that is fed in a whole bunch of ways. We've lost a narrative that connects us. And by that I mean, if you look around, what is described as the grievance of white working people, or the grievances of white working people, right? The economic insecurity, the social isolation, the despair as measured by things like suicide rates or addiction rates, and frankly, even the cynicism about politics, because those issues are issues at election time and then disappear in between.
Correct.
That's the same stuff black and brown people have been feeling for generations. It's the same thing. And what we get or don't get from our leaders these days, or would-be leaders, many of them, is connecting those realities. The solutions, in fact, can be beneficial and will be beneficial for generations in that they're the same types. And fearlessly calling that out, I think, is something we don't often get from our leaders. I have talked to folks who are struggling day to day, women, black women, struggling day to day to put it together. They have not given up on America. They haven't. And they've been disappointed again and again and again. And so to me, what's exciting and hopeful is that, kind of going back to the leaders who were here, the mayors who were here, and as a governor, you have to be a little guarded about how much you compliment mayors.
You never let that go.
They kind of treat you like you're the Christmas help. But they are doing two things which I think are essential to the leadership we need right now. One is they're innovating. And we are as hungry for innovation in public policy as in the private sector. The challenge is, innovation requires that you raise your tolerance for failure, and politics punishes failure. And so giving cover to those political innovators is incredibly important in all the ways we do. And the second is that they are willing to convene. They get the idea that not all solutions are going to come from government, in the same way that not all solutions are going to come from the private sector or the social sector, but that there is real power in position in being able to get people around the same table and problem solve collaboratively. They understand that. So they're trying new things, and they're bringing lots of different interests together to figure out what that thing is and to tailor it for the problem they're trying to solve. And I think those two ways of leading are incredibly hopeful. We're seeing that again and again.
Is that enough to push back against and this is me now pushing back on you, is that enough during this environment where you have this steady flow of misinformation, a constant barrage of lies, and you just have a heightened, like I didn't know if I was coming to New York today because of the heightened level of tension we have in the country. Is that enough?
Is there something happening?
I don't know.
All I heard is that some.
I'm just telling you what the people tell me. I don't know.
All I heard is that some would-be crook tweeted that he was going to be arrested today. I don't know why that's news, but somehow or other it's something to. Oh, I did it again, didn't I?
I know. Let's go to commercial. We got to regroup.
Now look, it's naive to suggest that you can just talk over all that.
Yeah.
But part of what we have to do is talk over all of that. And by that, I don't just mean being louder. We have to talk to the people who are hungry for something else than just the noisy, chaotic confrontation, and talk about solutions. I mean, I think one of the reasons why so many people have stuck in today, when at the end of most conferences, at the latter part, this is why I was complaining, where did she go, Sam, about sticking me here? At the end of the day, nobody was going to be here, but people have stuck in.
No, but it's right before happy hour, so I felt confident. I was really confident. The free beer that's setting up, I felt confident in our time slot.
But we're hungry for solutions. We're interested in positive outcomes and vision and what we can do to contribute to that. So I don't think that leaders or would-be leaders have to be the font of all the answers. I think leadership actually requires some humility, that you don't have all the answers, but an interest and a curiosity in what those answers might be, and convening smart people and regular people around ways forward. And when we see those, when we see opportunities and examples like those mayors here, we need to figure out ways to lift them up.
You know, if you've ever had the opportunity to be around like Magic Johnson or Charles Barkley, anybody, they always would, their brain processes what they would do today if they were still able to play. They watch the game and then they're like, I would have done this against this person and go out. So with all of these resources that we have, thanks to Brandon, like let's go Brandon, right? Thanks to Joe Biden.
That's right.
If you were governor, your first 100 days,
ooh, mercy.
Talk about, because Bill Clinton once told me something that stuck with me. Well, he told me a few things, but this one, he said, ideas win elections. I've never let go of that because we don't have enough people who have just fundamentally ideas, big ideas. So what would be some of the new governor, Deval Patrick's big ideas in 100 days?
You know what? I governed during the Great Recession. So the idea of having, as as the last incumbent, the outgoing governor had resources he didn't know how to spend. He couldn't figure out, or wasn't interested in figuring out what to do with that money. I think education is critically important. I think innovation in education is critically important. I'd pick what we call gateway city in Massachusetts and create a model that like the Harlem Renaissance Zone, and fund it out for the decade. And that's the difference. It's the stick-to-itiveness. We're going to keep at this and innovating. We're 98.9% of our residents have health insurance today. We did health reform before President Obama did the ACA. That bill was signed by my predecessor, Governor Romney. It took effect the day I took.
Never heard of him before.
Yeah, it's all right. It took effect the day I took office. That bill succeeded because there was a broad coalition of people in healthcare delivery, in patient advocacy, in labor, in the business community generally, who came together to invent that reform and then stuck together while we implemented it. And so I signed maybe 3 or 4 major healthcare reform bills after that one because we were learning things. This is my point. We kept learning from what we were trying to do and improving as we went. This is the way most of the rest of life works. What Jeffrey Canada was talking about in the education sphere is the same sort of thing. There's a vision, there's some components, but the stick-to-itiveness to adjust and refine as we go forward, I think is made possible, frankly, by the kinds of resources that are available at the state and local level, thanks to the president.
You've also excelled in the private sector, and you've been able to help people truly understand the good that can come with these public-private partnerships. What are some of the other things we should see? How should, first of all, if you were talking to these mayors, how should they approach the private sector? Because that's the first thing that a lot of people don't know how to do. I speak to Mayor Woodfin every day, or Mayor Scott from Little Rock, great people, or Mayor Lumumba from Jackson.
Yeah.
How should these young elected officials first approach the private sector? And then what is the challenge for the private sector in stepping up to fill in, or as we say in the church down south, stand in the gap?
Yep.
Where government just can't provide today?
So I feel like I had an advantage when I went into office because most of my professional life had been in the private sector. So there was a language I understood, and you could call BS. You know, usually the conversations between executive leadership in Massachusetts and the private sector was around tax advantages of one kind or another. By the way, no business makes an investment decision on the strength of the tax code. Nobody. It's a sweetener, right? It's a sweetener. But if you're not going to make money, the tax code isn't going to make you make money, right? And so being able to have those kinds of conversations at that level, where is the line between the private and the public sector? And most of the rest of the world where I've done business, that line is blurred. Here, we act like it's a bright thing. We all have the same interests. Every business wants a well-prepared workforce, and while I don't believe education is just about preparing employees, I don't believe that, it is also about readying people to join the productive economy. So if we all have an interest in that, how do we all participate? And what are the ways in which we can collaborate on those solutions? We did the Life Sciences Initiative, for example, which was a 10-year initiative to build, to strengthen our own biotech industry, where we had some fundamental components already in place. We weren't trying to replace the private sector. It's not our place. But where are the gaps? What could we do to knit this together into a strategy that we were all trying to point to? And that was one of the strategies that led us out of recession faster than most of the rest of the country, and we are now the international destination for that industry. That didn't happen by accident. Wes is trying to steal it.
It's not called stealing. In politics, it's called R&D.
It's R&D.
No, it's rob and duplicate. Okay.
But I mean, I just think, you know, that the invitation. Sometimes I think business people feel like they get invited into a governor's office or a mayor's office for a finger wagging. But the invitation to come in and be a part of of the solution to a problem, and being able to have those conversations honestly, knowing that they're not going to get embarrassed outside the office, and that you don't expect to be embarrassed either. I think it takes a minute, but it is. I think it's essential.
That's powerful. And what are some of the things that you would want the private sector to do a better job of now in standing in that gap? What are some of these are all of our friends here. What are some of the challenges that you would give to them when we leave this room?
We did we had a model for contracting, large and small, where we had 4 categories equally weighted. Finance, meaning, did you have the financial capability for the project? The technical competencies, the design, if it was an infrastructure, and diversity was an equal 4th. If you had those components, you were competitive. If you did not, and people push back. Well, we can't find a this or a that. We can't find these professional services. By the way, when I say diversity, I'm talking about in the equity ownership of the project as well. And there were crickets at the beginning. It's like, you can't do this. And then we said, okay, we'll wait. And then the team started to show up. and I'd say probably a third of the buildings going up now, because it takes a long time, in Massachusetts today, have those components, including Black and brown equity ownership in the projects. That's a way, right? We're talking about what it takes. The business community is a part of that conversation. That you got to call BS when they say they can't find. Sometimes you have to introduce. There are boundaries for that, but it's not impossible. And it's, in fact, it's getting easier and easier. And then there is the power of example. So you see it someplace else. You say, well, they got it done over there. How come we can't do it here? You know all those developers over there. Ask them.
One of the questions that I was dying to ask you when Sam told me I had this opportunity is, from your perch in the governor's mansion, you've been able to see the impact of local government. And oftentimes in rooms such as these, we focus on how we're going to transform Congress or how we're going to elect the next president of the United States. Can you talk about the impact and import of your school districts, of your mayors, of, you know, when I was talking to a group about police reform, they were talking about what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are doing or are not doing. Mm-hmm. And I said, did you know that your mayor actually selects your police chief, mm-hmm. right? Just purely basic fundamentals of the way governance works. So can you talk about that import, just so we're sure that we're drilling down on the right things to transform our communities?
I will, and I will say that I want to underscore what's implied in your question, which is that a lot of the action is at the local level.
The majority of it.
A lot of the innovation is at the local level. But I want to be careful to avoid the false choice that it's either local or Congress and the White House. We have to keep our eye on all of it. The ability right now, you asked me what I would do if I had the resources that governors have or mayors have today. Those resources are there because of decisions made at the federal level. And the latitude, here's the connection, right? So much of that money nowadays is coming with a lot fewer restrictions on how you use it. That's a good thing if the local leader is a constructive, forward-looking person. But if the local leader is not, that money that was supposed to be spent on poverty alleviation might well be spent.
They just build prisons.
Or a football stadium, or give a bonus to a football coach. I think these are all.
Well, it depends. If the coach is winning, now I'm an SEC guy.
Okay, all right.
Slow down.
All right. I think I'm citing real examples. But you know, again, you heard the mayors here talk about how they are using federal resources today to target chronic poverty in Black communities.
Correct.
That is purposeful. Elect someone different, and that wouldn't happen, right? So both things have to happen, and I think, frankly, we have the bandwidth and imagination to be able to concentrate on all of those levels and not just fixate on the one or the other.
Well, we're running low on time here, but as we wrap up, I mean, we've been here all day. We've been able to see the innovation, the thought. What do you want to see next? Not just from BEA, but the collective room of thought leaders and elected officials. In 5-10 years from now, what does Deval Patrick's America look like?
Well, in 5 to 10 years, we're going to need a bigger room. Because there'll be a lot more people clamoring to be in here and be a part of this, and not just to take a bow, but to look back and say, what are the ideas that came out of that first one, and how have they been refined as implemented, what hasn't worked, and then to look forward and say, well, what's next? You know, where are we're not going to solve. It took us hundreds of years to get to where we are. It's not going to take us hundreds of years to get to the promised land. It is not. Not with this collection of talent, not with this moment, not with, frankly, the impatience, the lovely impatience of the generation coming up right now. But we will disappoint them if we don't harvest these great ideas and turn them into action plans and then start deploying the talent in this room and the talent who can't imagine being in a room like this to actually get it done.
Well, I just want to wrap up where I began, which is to just say thank you for being a role model and somebody I wanted to be like back when I ran for office in 2006. And thank you for always being there for me, both in public and in private. You and your amazing wife. And I could not be here without Tony and Robin Coles, who I love. And since I have a microphone, I get to say I love them in front of the amazing crowd. And Charles and his amazing bride as well. So thank you all very much. Have a blessed day.